Lydia sat in her modest hotel room, staring at the eviction notice. The words blurred together as a wave of frustration rose inside her. Living in Cape Town had been costly from the start, but losing her job a month ago had made everything unbearable. Rent was due, and there was no money left, no savings, no side income, just growing anxiety. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. There was only one option left. She had to face her landlord. Gathering her courage, she stepped into the hallway, her heart pounding. The hotel wasn't fancy, but it was home. She couldn't afford to lose it. As she approached the front desk, she saw him, her landlord, Zubari. He was tall, well dressed, and exuded quiet confidence. She had seen him a few times before, always professional and composed. He was a mystery to her, someone she had never spoken to beyond polite nods. When his eyes met hers, she hesitated. There was no way to sugarcoat this. I need to talk to you, she said, her voice shaky. Zubari studied her for a moment before nodding. Come with me. She followed him into his office, a neat, organized space with shelves lined with books. He gestured for her to sit while he remained standing, his hands resting on the desk. I can't pay rent this month, she blurted out, hating how small her voice sounded. I lost my job. I just need some time. He didn't react immediately, leaning back slightly as he considered her words. The silence stretched, and Lydia's stomach tightened. She expected frustration, a lecture, maybe even an eviction notice. But instead, he did something unexpected. He smiled. Money isn't the only currency, he said finally. Lydia blinked. What? He clasped his hands together. Life isn't always about dollars and cents. I have a different offer for you. Her mind raced. What could he possibly mean? Was this some kind of trap? The idea made her defensive, but he remained calm, unreadable. I won't ask you to leave, he continued. You can stay here. No rent. She leaned forward. No rent? But, he added, holding up a finger, I want something in return. A chill ran through her. This was where things got complicated. What exactly do you want? She asked cautiously. He studied her, his expression unreadable. Your time, Lydia frowned. My time? Yes, he said simply. An hour or two a day. No work, no obligations. Just conversation. She stared at him, confused. That's it. That's it, he said calmly. Her mind screamed at her to be suspicious. Nothing in life was free, but there was something in his voice, something genuine. He didn't seem like a man who played games. Still, this was insane. What if I say no? He shrugged. Then I'll have no choice but to follow the usual rules. Rent is due. She chewed on her lip, weighing her options. There had to be a catch. There was always a catch. But at that moment, facing an eviction she couldn't afford and with no other options, she gave in. All right, she said slowly. I'll do it. He smiled again, this time with a hint of amusement. As Lydia left his office, she felt more confused than relieved. What had she just agreed to? Why would a man like him want to spend time with someone like her? And most importantly, what did he really want? That night, Lydia lay awake, replaying their conversation over and over. Something about Zubari unsettled her, not in a threatening way, but in a way she couldn't explain. Why would a wealthy man waste his time talking to a broke tenant? What did he gain from this? The more she thought about it, the less sense it made. By morning, she almost convinced herself to leave, but reality sank in. She had nowhere else to go. When she arrived at his office later that day, he was already waiting, sitting in his leather chair, his expression calm and unreadable. You came, he said, as if he had never doubted she would. I keep my word, she replied, crossing her arms. Good, he said. Let's talk. Lydia sat stiffly, unsure of how to begin. About what? Anything, he said, leaning back. Tell me about yourself. She hesitated. Why does that interest you? His lips curved slightly. People are more than their circumstances. You're not just a woman who can't pay rent. You have a life, a story. I want to hear it. Something in his tone made her answer. She told him about growing up in a small village in Nigeria, moving to Cape Town with big dreams, and how those dreams crumbled under the weight of reality. He listened without interrupting, his focus unwavering. When she finished, he nodded. You remind me of myself when I came here, except I had nothing, not even a place to sleep. Lydia frowned. You were homeless for a while? He admitted. I worked odd jobs, saved every dollar. People saw my skin and my accent and assumed I wouldn't make it. She leaned in despite herself. But you did, he chuckled. Success is just failure, stacked on top of failure, until something shifts. For the first time, Lydia saw him as more than just a landlord. He had fought battles she couldn't even imagine. As the days passed, their conversations deepened. She learned he was from Nigeria, that he had built his first business from nothing, and that he believed real wealth wasn't in money, but in knowledge and resilience. He asked about her dreams, what she wanted out of life. No one had ever asked her that before. Not like they genuinely cared, but a part of her still questioned his motives. One evening, she asked him directly, why me? He tilted his head. Why not you? You could spend time with anyone, people who actually matter. He leaned forward. Who decides who matters? Money? Status? She looked away. That's how the world works. He smiled knowingly. Only if you let it. Lydia didn't have an answer to that. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't just surviving. She was thinking, growing. And that terrified her more than anything. Lydia never expected to feel comfortable around Zubari. But their conversations became the one part of her day she looked forward to. He had a way of making her think differently, challenging her views without forcing his own on her. She started seeing the world through his eyes, how he built his business, how he handled prejudice, how he never let anyone dictate his worth. But comfort often leads to complacency. One afternoon, as Lydia walked back to her room, her phone buzzed. A familiar name appeared on the screen. Jason. She hesitated before answering. It had been almost a year since their messy breakup, yet here he was, acting like nothing had happened. Lydia, he said smoothly, I heard you're still in the city. Her jaw tightened. What do you want, Jason? The memories flooded back. How he had left her when she needed him most. How he always had a way of pulling her back in. She should have ignored him. Instead, she found herself saying, fine. That night, they met at a quiet bar. Jason looked the same. Cocky, charming, dangerous in a way that felt all too familiar. He bought her a drink and asked about her life. She mentioned losing her job, but she left out the part about Zubari. Jason didn't need to know. You know, he said, leaning in, you don't have to struggle like this. I could take care of you. Lydia stiffened. That was always his game, dangling security in front of her like bait. But for some reason, tonight it didn't tempt her like it used to. Things are different now, she said. Jason smirked. Are they? She didn't have an answer. Maybe they weren't. Maybe she was just pretending. A few drinks later, her judgment was blurred when Jason suggested they go back to his place. She hesitated, but only for a moment. The next morning, reality hit hard as Lydia slipped out of Jason's apartment. Shame clung to her like a second skin. She had betrayed the one person who had been honest with her. She told herself it didn't matter that nothing had happened between her and Zubari, but deep down, she knew that was a lie. When she returned to the hotel, she found him waiting. His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes had shifted. Long night? He asked, his voice unreadable. Lydia swallowed hard. It's not what you think. He gave a small, sad smile. I think you're free to make your own choices. The word stung more than anger ever could. She wanted to explain, to tell him she had made a mistake. But before she could, he reached into his desk, pulled out a slip of paper, and slid it across to her. You don't owe me anything, he said quietly. Your debt is cleared. Her heart pounded. What you mean? I mean, you're free to go, he said. Tears burned her eyes. I don't want to go, he exhaled, looking at her for a long moment. Then, with quiet finality, he said, But you already did. Lydia sat in her room, staring at the slip of paper in her hands. The words blurred together, but the meaning was clear. Her rent was forgiven. She was free, yet for the first time in her life, freedom felt like a burden instead of a gift. She had thought she could outrun her past, but Jason's presence reminded her that she was still the same girl, impulsive, reckless, always searching for something she couldn't define. And now she had lost the one person who had seen something more in her. Days passed, but she couldn't bring herself to leave. Not yet. She avoided Zubari, ashamed, but his absence faded heavier than his presence had ever been. The conversations, the quiet wisdom, the way he made her believe she was capable of more. They lingered like an unfinished sentence. One evening, she found herself outside his office door. She raised a hand to knock, then hesitated. What could she possibly say? That she regretted it? That she realized now what he had been trying to show her before? Before she could decide, the door opened. Zubari stood there, expression calm but distant. She swallowed hard. Can we talk? She asked. He studied her for a long moment, then stepped aside. Lydia sat in the familiar chair. But everything felt different now. The space between them wasn't just physical. It was the weight of a lesson she had only begun to understand. I made a mistake, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, but there was no satisfaction in it. What did you learn from it? Lydia exhaled, forcing herself to face the truth. That I keep running back to things that hurt me because they are familiar, that I choose comfort over growth. She looked up, meeting his gaze. That I was afraid of what you saw in me. For the first time, his expression softened. And what you see in yourself now? She hesitated, then said the words that had been forming inside her since the moment she walked into his office for the first time. Someone who doesn't want to keep making the same mistakes. Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was full of something unspoken, something real. I didn't offer you a place to stay because I wanted something from you, Zubari said finally. I offered it because I saw potential, but potential means nothing if you don't believe in it yourself. Lydia nodded, absorbing his words. For years, she had blamed life, bad luck, and other people. But the truth was, she had been her own worst enemy. I want to change, she said, her voice firm for the first time. He studied her, then nodded. Then do it. No promises, no guarantees. Just a challenge, one you're finally ready to accept.